So you've worked with the UN. I think pretty much everybody in our party has done a little bit of research into the Agenda 2030 and whatnot, and we all would agree that the UN is a corrupt organization. You know, 100 people say how can 193 countries, of which the majority are not democratic. I just posted, on Venezuela and where it started, and not much different from Canada, really. Very wealthy nation, very natural resource rich. And we look at where they're at today. Some people don't want to believe that that's a possible outcome here in Canada. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'll sort of equate it to the Wexit. Okay, so Wexit talks about we want to separate. Maybe we'll become a state or a territory of the U.S. And the U.S. will be our savior. My question to them is, and I put this to Peter Downing as well, how'd that work for Puerto Rico? Puerto Rico had all of their natural resources taken away from them, and once they were done, they were left off the side. Now they're fending for themselves. Why would we expect that to be any different for us here? Very wealthy with the oil and gas, but once that's gone, then what? But then on top of that, you have to look at First Nations. First Nations have already said, we're not leaving. So again...
Well, why would you leave when it's not the provinces that provide them with their funding and their special privileges, but the federal government?
Exactly. So you've got to convince you got to convince First Nations that leaving Canada is going to be more beneficial for them. Is it? I actually don't see it being beneficial for anybody because if you look at Wexit, and I don't even want to call it a plan, I don't even know what you would call it, but their idea or their ideals, they want to leave and just say, okay, we're done. We're going to use the UN to help us do what we need to do, but once we're done, then we're done with the UN.
Yeah, it lacks a little bit of principle.
Right.
Right, it does. Because on the one hand, they're saying we want sovereignty and we're going to be our own province, but if you're not a part of Canada, it's really Canada that has a relationship with the United Nations and the agreement. So are you going to enter into a contract with the United Nations? And then, yeah, there's a lot of conflicting...
It's a challenge. I mean, you and I have talked enough about this to know that the challenge that we're faced here is not about... We have to create the infrastructure. We just have to. You and I have talked about this before. I mean, the UN is not going to help us. The simple fact is the UN, I've seen it firsthand, as we discussed. I've been on UN missions where I've seen cargo loads have been stolen the night before by warlords and nothing is done. And yet the UN figured, oh, great, we got everything that we asked for, knowing...
Well, Justin Trudeau was just in Africa, and one of his comments, I don't know if he meant to say it or not, but one of his comments was, I hope some of this money gets to the people.
And none of it will. I've spent months and months in Africa, Rwanda, Kenya, Somalia, and none of that money will get to the people. It only makes the wealthy there wealthier, and it makes the corrupt there more corrupt. So who are we, in fact, helping? All he's sitting there doing is giving money to people in order to try and secure a Security Council seat. To what end?
Let's talk. So what would the benefit to Canada be to be on the UN Council?
I don't see a benefit at all. In all honesty.
So why is everybody, whether it's the Liberal Party or the Conservative Party, why are they so obsessed with having this UN seat?
I can only speak from my own personal opinion.
That's what it's all about, personal opinions.
I believe it's because of this one world order or one world government that they're looking at instilling. Okay, when you have a seat on the Security Council and we end up going into this one world government, well, now we have a say. But then there's also the potential for that seat to turn into a leadership position. It's about ego. It's about power.
Let's destroy an entire country, economics, 37 million people's lives. You know, I know the UN has stated that they would like Canada as a second world country and a first world country. My sister kindly sends me these little tidbits and notes. She has her law degree, does quite a bit of due diligence and research, and she's always sending me these little comments and notes about the UN this and the UN that. But if we go and we look at the pursuit of this UN, and so there is one world. I don't understand why Canada would give up, and there's some debate even around that as to whether or not Canada even is a sovereign country. We won't even go there today, but
that's a long conversation. But yeah, the easiest way to understand that, in my mind, is it's about control. Okay, it's about power.
Thank you for watching this excerpt of Nadine One-on-One with Kelly Laurence. If you enjoyed the excerpt, please be sure to watch the full video.